Welcome to the Chief Architect Building Demonstration. My name is Kayla and I will be presenting for you today. And then we also have Emily here with us. She's here on chat to answer any questions you might have during the presentation. Before we get started, we're going to take a look at our audio and our GoToMeeting control panel. The standard for your audio is going to be use mic and speakers. If you're hearing me just fine, then you don't need to worry about doing anything. We do have everyone muted today, so you don't need to worry about setting up a microphone. However, if you are having trouble hearing me, clicking on this audio setup button can help troubleshoot that. If you still have trouble after going through the audio setup options, feel free to select the use telephone option. A number and an audio pin will appear below. Like I said, we do have Emily here with us, so if you have any questions at all, feel free to type those in. You'll type in your question and you'll see her response here below. So today, we're going to start just by looking at the program as a whole. Then we'll begin by drawing our first floor walls and dimensioning them. We'll deal with openings, so our doors and windows. We'll move on to our foundation and building a second floor, as well as the roof. And then we'll do a little bit of kitchen design before focusing on our framing and material list and everything we need to finish up the plan and create a set of construction documents. So let's just jump right in. When you first open up Chief Architect Premier X6, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have your welcome screen where if you need a little bit of extra help, we have some resources over here. You do have the option of just jumping right into a new plan. Or if you've been working previously, you can open up one of your recent plans and get going with it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to open up a plan, and what we're looking at right here is what is going to become our first floor. And we're going to begin drawing with all of our architectural drawing tools, which are up here in the toolbar at the top. So we're going to begin just by drawing out our first floor walls. So up here in the very top, we have our wall options. We'll begin with just a simple straight exterior wall. And to draw, we're going to click and drag. And you'll notice along the side there's a temporary dimension telling me the length of the wall. Now there are a lot of different ways to draw and dimension out walls. My personal preference is to right-click and drag, which puts us into a continuous draw mode. Then I like to simply get the footprint of the home, so the general shape down, and then once that's finished, I dimension from there. Now if you'll notice, as soon as I completed my room, it gave me my living area, so it's already calculating how much living space I have in this house. And when we get into a 3D view, we'll do a floor overview, just like a dollhouse view. You can see I already have a completed structure. It has flooring and molding, there's already layer properties to my walls, and this was all done simply by drawing out walls and connecting them to create a room. And all of the properties that you see here, so the flooring for instance, is set up by our default settings. So you have the ability to go in and set your defaults before you begin. You can even set various templates set up with different default settings if there are going to be a particular set of materials or wall defaults, for instance, that you're going to be using frequently. And we'll talk a little bit more about defaults later. Right now we need to get this space dimensioned correctly. So there's, like I've said, several different ways that you can dimension a house. One of the easiest ways can be just to use the temporary dimensions. When you select a wall, you'll see I have two dimensions that have appeared here. I have one parallel to the wall and one perpendicular. And as soon as I place my cursor right over that dimension with the wall selected, I can select the dimension and type in what I want it to become. Keep in mind that this is going to move whatever wall I have selected at that time. So in this case, it's going to move my left wall. However, my preference for dimensioning is to do an auto exterior dimension. So with one click, it will automatically place all of my exterior dimensions around my house. Then I can go through, select each wall, select the dimension, and quickly get what I need to have. Now once my house is dimensioned correctly, I'm going to go in and delete all of my automatic dimension. I can come up to Edit, Delete Objects, All Rooms on this Floor, Automatic Dimensions, and select Delete. And that will just clean up our workspace a little bit. So now let's get back into our 3D view. Now we've been working a lot in our plan view, however you can work in 3D just as easily. So I'm going to start drawing out some of my interior walls. And I'm zooming in here by using my scroll wheel on my mouse, so you can zoom in and out using that scroll wheel. I'm going to grab this wall and pull it across to the other side. Then I'm going to come up, and instead of grabbing an exterior wall, I'm going to grab an interior one, and even in a 3D view we can be drawing out walls. So once those are all drawn, we can begin to place some of our doors and windows. So again, up here on our architectural toolbar, we have the ability to place a hinged door. Now watch what happens when I place an interior door instead of an exterior door. It's placed two completely separate door styles because it can tell that this is an interior space and this is leading to an exterior. So you have the ability to set your defaults for each. With doors, we also have doorways, sliding doors, and pocket doors, which we'll place that pocket door right here, and then we're going to place one on this wall. We'll move it down later. So as you can see, here I have siding on the inside of my house. This is a very easy thing to fix. Obviously I'm using an exterior wall when I should be using an interior one. So I'm going to toggle back to my floor plan, and I'm going to use my break wall tool in order to break the wall into two sections. Then I can select this section that's on the inside of my house, open it up, and in wall types we have the ability to change it to an interior 6 wall. I still want it to be 6 inches because it's going to be a bearing wall, however I don't want it to have that siding. So now when we toggle back to our 3D view, you can see that siding has been removed. Next, I'm going to place a window. Now once again, the window that I've placed in my plan is the default that I had set up before we began. However, with all objects, even after they're placed, you can open them up and change them. So with this window, I'll begin just by editing the height. I want it to be more like 56 inches. And the default, I believe, is a double hung, but we'll make sure that it is just in case. And then I'm going to come down to our lights panel, where I can easily increase the number of window panes in my window. I also have the ability to add a sill, so I'll add a sill to the interior and exterior of my window. And if we wanted to, we could add a lintel, change all of our casing options, add shutters. There's quite a few things that you can do to edit each individual object. But once I have it the way that I like, I'll select OK. You can see the changes applied. Now, I want all of my windows to be that particular window. So instead of going in and changing my default settings to match that, I have a button down here on my Edit toolbar, which is the toolbar specific to edit the object I have selected, and I can set it as my default, so that now every window I place in my plan will look like the first one. Now I already know that I want 3 windows on this wall, and I want them to each be 3 feet apart. I know my window is also 3 feet wide. So I am going to use our multiple copy and select the interval to be 6 feet or 72 inches. Then I'll select OK, and what this multiple copy does is it enables me to click and drag so that then I place 2 more windows and I know that they are exactly 3 feet apart. Now, to center them on this wall, I'm going to hold down my Control key in order to grab all 3 windows. come down to my Center Object tool and center it over that space. When we come back to our floor plan view, now we can see exactly what those dimensions look like. We've been placing things mostly in 3D, excuse me, but we do have the ability to drop objects in our 2D view as well, obviously. So when we place a door, which for this example I've placed a hinge door, before I release, so I'm holding down my mouse, I have the ability to rotate the door around and choose what angle I want it to go at. Or for a door that's already placed, I can switch the hinge side with the click of a button. These can all be resized by opening them up or by using our edit handles in order to resize them manually. Now the last thing I need to draw out in order to complete my first floor is my front porch. So I'm going to come up, and instead of going to my wall tools, we have a series of railing tools. I'm going to select my straight deck railing, and just like the walls, click and drag to finish off my deck. And because I was using my deck railing tool, as soon as I finished the 4 walls, it automatically named it a deck and gave it dimensions. However, I don't want this to be a deck, I want this to be a porch. We'll come into our floor overview so we can see this a little bit better. So as you can see, because it's named a deck, it's framing it like a deck. So to change that, I'm going to select the room, open it up, and under room type, I'm going to call it a porch. Then select OK. Each of our rooms have various attributes. So for instance, if we come back to our floor plan, we have the ability to open up each of these rooms and change the name. I'm going to use a new tool that we have in X6 called our Room Divider tool, and click and drag in order to divide these 2 living areas. Then I can select this room separately from this one, open it up, and we'll call it a kitchen. Then select OK. This will give it some different default settings which will come into play later when we work on our electrical. What you call a room can also have a pretty big effect upon how the foundation builds below it. So next, let's take a look at building our foundation. Come up to our floor tools and select Build Foundation. There are quite a few different options that we can choose before we build the foundation to tell it how it's going to be built. So we can do walls with footings, which is what we're going to be doing today, or you can change it to a piered foundation or more like a slab continuous pour foundation. There also is a new option in X6 to hang your first floor platform inside the foundation walls. Then here is where we can set our stem wall height. I'm going to set it at 42 inches. And if you were doing a different type of stem wall, like a CMU or a different concrete, then here's where you would edit the default foundation wall. When you raise this minimum height high enough, it actually will automatically create a basement space and add in some flooring for you as well. Since we're setting it at 42 inches, it's smart enough to know that that is not big enough for a basement. Notice too that we have different options for a garage, so that if we had a garage in this plan, and we opened up the room and defined it as a garage, the foundation below would build differently than the rest of the house. If you need a treated sill plate, here's where you can specify the options for that. And then you can also get in and specify your rebar spacing, the size, as well as the overlap. So we'll go ahead and select OK. And we do want to derive it from the first floor plan. That's why we start with the first floor rather than starting with the foundation, so that we can easily create the foundation based off of what needs to hold up the first floor. And it automatically brought us down to our foundation level. And here we can see our 8-inch stem walls, and then this dashed line is our footing. And notice it did not automatically build a foundation around our porch. We'll exit out of here and go back up to our first floor, and now we're going to begin working on our second floor. So exactly the same as the foundation, we'll come up and instead of selecting Build Foundation, we'll select Build New Floor. yes, I do want to derive it from the first floor, rather than opening it up and having a blank slate on the second floor. We do have different defaults for our second floor as for our first, even down to the floor finish and structure that we're using. Now the one thing I'm going to change here is I'm going to change my rough ceiling and lower it down to 0 inches. The reason why I'm doing this, and you can kind of tell by the picture here, is because I want the roof to come down and meet up with my first floor. So to do that, I'm going to start by having no ceiling on the second floor. Select OK, and again it brought us up to our second floor automatically. Now the first thing I'm going to do on the second floor is we're going to turn on the reference display so that we can see what's going on the floor below. This is helpful when we begin drawing walls and moving things around. And I'm going to grab this wall and simply pull it back to meet up with its counterpart. Then I'm going to grab this wall, and just like we did on the floor below, I'm going to pull it back to meet up with the far wall. Then, before we begin working on our roof, I'm going to open up this larger section on the right, and under Structure, I'm going to raise our rough ceiling height to 40 inches. And select OK. Then let's build our roof. I'm going to come up, select Build Roof, which will open up the Build Roof dialog. Now the very first thing we are going to do in this dialog is select to build roof planes, and then we are also going to select to auto rebuild roof. Now with Chief Architect software, there are two main ways that you build roofs. There's our automatic roof tools, and then there's our manual roof tools. And I'm going to start out actually by coming to this last panel. We're going to take a look at some of the roof styles that we can do automatically. So the way that our automatic roof style works is you open up the wall to specify what the roof plane above it is doing. And then with our manual roof tools, you open up the roof planes themselves or draw them out manually and edit them. By default, Chief Architect will automatically place a hip roof onto each home, but by opening up the walls you can specify all of these different roof styles. So now let's go back up to our roof panel, and here's where we can set our default pitch. Now obviously we will have the ability to edit the pitch of each individual roof plane, but by default every roof plane in the plan is going to be 12 in 12. You can specify the default overhang, and if we come into our options, here's where you can take off a default gutter or edge flashing. You can specify the eaves. Here we have some framing options for if you're going to be stick framing. Whether you're adding a rafter tail, your ridge caps, here you can actually specify what the gutter profile is going to look like, and then what materials you will be using for your roof. So we'll select OK, and these lines that have appeared are our roof planes. So now let's take a full overview of our plan so far. I'm going to come up and exit out of our floor overview. We don't need that right now. So as you can see, it automatically placed a hip roof onto our structure. By default, it did an 8 in 12 roof pitch. For this section, I want to have my 2D and 3D side by side, so I'm simply going to grab this panel, pull it out, and there we have both next to each other. Next, I'm going to select the wall that I want to change the roof above. So I want to make this section, and we'll zoom around in our 3D so we can see that. I want to make this a gable wall. We'll select the wall, open it up, and under our roof tab, we'll specify it as a full gable wall. And because we have automatic roof selected, it automatically updated for us. There is a shortcut, however. Down here we have the ability to simply click and make it a gable. And we'll do the same thing over here and out in front. We can do that in 3D as well, as you can see. Now I'm going to grab these three walls technically, and open them up because under the roof tab I have the ability to modify the pitch, which I'm actually going to leave at 12 and 12, so we're okay there. So we'll go down to the first floor in our plan view and select our two side porch walls, open them up, and we'll change the pitch here under our roof tab to a 6 and 12. So now it's not meeting up with the roof. And I also need to turn off our reference display. We don't really need that on right now. So now that we have the roof pretty well set, I'm going to come in, and in Build Roof I'm going to deselect Auto Rebuild Roofs. Click OK. And now to illustrate this next part, I'm going to exit out of our 3D view, go up to the first floor, and we're going to do a back-clipped cross section, so it'll take just a little snippet of the home so far. This is also a great view to see what our foundation is looking like. But as you can see, here on our second floor, we currently have 40-inch high ceiling. And we'll go ahead and tile these views vertically as well. But I'm going to open up this larger section, and we're going to raise the roof up. And we're going to raise the ceiling height, the rough ceiling height, to 100 inches. Then we'll select OK, and you can see in our cross-section view where the ceiling now sits. And if we zoom in on our plan view a little bit, we have these dashed lines that indicate the exact same thing. So that when I open up this smaller room, I can change the rough ceiling to 100 inches, and we can see where the ceiling lies there. So now that we're finished with that, I'll exit out of our cross-section view and draw out a few interior walls. We're going to drop in some dormers into this plan, but before we do that, we need to have walls for them to meet up with. And then I'm also going to open up each of these rooms and call them an attic. And what that does is not only reduce the living area, since attic space is obviously not living space, but it also removes things like drywall from the room. Now we're going to get into another full overview so we can see the roof as we make changes. So I'll zoom in on this area and we'll drop in a dormer. It's again under our roof tools, and we're going to do an auto dormer. You also have the ability, you'll notice, to do an auto floating dormer where it doesn't meet up with the walls, but it is more like a decorative type dormer. Then we'll drop those in, and we're going to have two dormers here. So I'm going to move one over, and then we'll copy, and this time when I select the move, I'm going to hit Tab, which will allow me to enter the coordinates of how far I want this second dormer to copy and move over. So I'm going to type in 10 feet, and we want the Y position to be 0, because we want it to be perfectly aligned with the first dormer, and we'll select OK, and there it moved it 10 feet over. And now, just like we did with the windows, I can select both dormers and center them in this space, which they were pretty centered to begin with. And while I have both selected, I'll go ahead and open them up, and we're going to go into the Walls panel and change the ceiling height to 80 inches. Select OK, and there you can see it raised those up for us. That gives us a little bit more living space inside the house. Now we're going to place one more dormer over in this section, and we'll go ahead and open this one up. And whereas previously we just left it a gable dormer, we do have a number of different dormer styles that we're able to do. You can easily do something like an eyebrow dormer or a barrel. We're going to choose the shed dormer option. And then again, going into the walls, we're going to change it to 200 inches wide, but leave the height the same. And there we have our shed dormer. Now I'm going to use our multiple copy tool from earlier to move this all the way over, come down and select multiple copy, change the interval to 38 inches, select OK, and pull the 5 windows across. And now let's take a camera view inside this room so we can see what the dormers are looking like. So here we have our nice dormers, and you'll notice we once again have siding on the inside of our house. So we're going to go through a slightly different method to alter it this time. We'll come back to the floor plan, select this wall, open it up, and we're going to choose our roof option so that we can do lower wall type if split by budding roof. We can change it to an interior 6 wall, select OK, and now when we get back into our full camera, you'll notice we have siding on the inside, drywall on the inside of our wall. But we've maintained the siding on the section that is above our roof line. So now we'll go ahead and exit out of both 3D views and go down to our first floor. And we'll take another 3D view of this section where we're going to be adding stairs. So I'm going to zoom in and come up to our stair tools. We do have a number of different stair options, just like with everything in Chief Architect software. So we have the ability to just click and place, which is really handy for something like an exterior porch, where it will automatically see how many treads you need. However, for right now, we're going to be creating U-stairs, so we're going to do our straight stairs. And click and drag, just like with walls, to draw them. And there you can see our stair section. Now I'm going to come over here and click and draw to create a second stair section. Then I'll click in between to create a landing. From here I can open up my stairs and it will tell me that it reaches the next level, that the best number of risers is 18, which is what we have. The stairs in Chief Architect are very smart. They automatically do the calculation for you to tell you exactly how many treads you need without having too large of a tread depth. So we'll select OK. And while these stairs look lovely, we are going to hit our heads pretty quickly walking up there. So we're going to select the stairs, and there's an option in our Edit toolbar to make an auto stairwell. So we're going to click that, and it automatically created a stairwell for us so that when we go up to the second floor, you can see we have railings, and if we go up to the second floor on the floor plan, it's drawn out the railings and named in an open below room. Now we're going to take a cross-section view, so I'm going to exit out of this full camera, and let's take a cross-section view of our stairs. So again, we'll grab a back clip, so we're just taking a clip of it. And what we want to determine is how much headroom we need versus how much we have. So just doing a quick calculation, we can use our tape measure tool just to get an estimate, which right now we're at about 8 feet 4 inches. So that far exceeds the 6 feet 8 inches that we need, which means we have room to pull back this railing and maximize our space up on the second floor. So to begin with, let's draw a line, and we'll make it parallel to our stairs, which we'll do by using our Make Parallel tool. And then I'm just going to grab this line and I'm going to snap it right onto the nose of the stairs. Then I'm going to draw another line parallel to my landing, and I'm going to grab my manual dimension tool and dimension that line. And we can go ahead and dimension it to be 6 feet 8 inches from the landing. Then I can pull this line over and find where it meets up with my stairs. So at this intersection where these two lines are meeting is where we're going to have our 6 feet 8 inch headroom. So if we were to dimension that, which we can do just with a tape measure, grab from our dimension line over to are parallel to the stairs line, we have at least another 2 feet 6 inches that we can do. It's showing 2 feet 8. To be careful, we can pull this railing out 2 feet 6 inches. So then when I come back to my floor plan, I can grab this railing, grab the move handle, hit tab, make sure that my X position stays the same, we're not moving left or right, but change my Y position to 2 feet 6 inches. So now when we come back to our cross section, we can pull this dimension all the way over. You can see we have more than enough room. Now I'm just going to go ahead and save this camera. We have the ability to save the active camera so that when I exit out of here, that cross-section camera remains. Now I want to show you, we'll open up this camera, and under Plan Display we have the ability to display it as a call-out. Change the label, change the way that the arrow displays, but that way you can see that, and it might help if we pull it down a little bit, that's displayed as a call-out. And then, even though we've exited out of here, if we double-click it, we can open it up and we still have our dimension there. And you'll still have it available later when you create your construction document. Alright, and now that we've finished with our stairs, let's go ahead and place a door up here. Just realized we hadn't done that yet. Make sure we can reach that second room. But we're going to go back down to our first floor and we're going to focus on our kitchen area. So I'm going to start just by grabbing a full camera and we'll take a look at our kitchen. So we're going to start just by placing a base cabinet. We do have a number of different cabinet tools, and so how our cabinets work is you simply place one in, and you'll notice as soon as I dragged that into the corner, it changed it to a corner cabinet for me. But when I place a cabinet, I'm placing just the default cabinet that we have set up for our plan. Then I have the ability to open it up just like any other object and change it. So I can change this to a bank of drawers, for instance. Change it to 10 inches, a drawer, and then we'll change it to another drawer. Select OK. And now we have a bank of drawers rather than a drawer and a door. And I'm going to place another base cabinet, and this time I'm going to resize it, and you can see my temporary dimensions even in a 3D view. I'm going to resize it to 42 inches to make room for a sink. You'll also notice as I'm resizing, it's going in 3-inch increments. It's to stay as standard cabinet sizes. However, you do have the ability to open it up and override that if you would like to do a more specific or custom cabinet. So we'll place one more base cabinet here before we drop in a full height over in our corner. And it wants to change to a corner when I pull my cursor into the corner. However, when I pull it away, you can tell by the outline, it's removed that setting. Now I'm going to grab this cabinet and using my nudge tools, so my arrows, I'm going to move it 2 inches away from the wall. And as I do that, you'll notice that it created an automatic filler. I'm just giving a little bit of space so that we can open up our doors and not smack the wall. And then I'm going to resize it to 42 inches. Now I'm going to place one more base cabinet over here before we open up our library. So to do so, I'm going to select my icon, looks like books, and I'm going to open up my library browser. So here we have all of the items available to place in our plan. The core catalog is what comes with the program itself. Our bonus and manufacturer catalogs are available for download on our website, and the user catalog, which I'm going to expand right now, enables you to grab items from the previous 3 catalogs and place them here. Your user catalog is also where custom items that you've imported from other sources will come. So I have one where I've grabbed a few items, and I'm going to grab a professional range and drop it into my plan. And then on the other side of the range, I'm going to place a base cabinet. And next to that, we'll round off our kitchen with one more full height. And you'll see I also have a built-in double-door refrigerator. So this item works where I can simply place my cursor right over the cabinet I want to drop this into, click, and it will place the fridge inside. Now, as you can see, this cabinet is a little bit too small to handle this fridge, so I'm going to pull it out so that it can accommodate the fridge. And now I'm going to do relatively the same thing with a sink. So we'll come up to our core catalogs this time. In our architectural folder, we will find our fixtures, sinks, kitchen sinks, and undermount. We'll grab a 42-inch and click to drop it into our base cabinet. And then right above that, I'm going to place a window. And you'll notice it automatically moved my sill up above my cabinet so that the window is not interfering with the cabinet. I'm going to center that over the sink and then raise it up to 46 inches high. So now I need to place a few wall cabinets. Grab my wall cabinet, again change it to a corner simply by placing my cursor into the corner, and drop in a few more. This one I'm going to use my edit handles to resize, and then one final we can place in our floor plan view. And I'm going to pull this out so that we have them side by side. Now going back down to our user catalog, I have a hood that I have specifically picked out. So I'm going to place that along the wall. And make sure that it's placed correctly, which it is, and then resize this cabinet to meet up with it. So now our kitchen is looking pretty good. We just need a dishwasher, which we'll grab out of our appliances and click to place into this cabinet. And finally, I have pre-designed an island that we can drop right into our floor plan. So this is a blocked object. It's something that I've created before that then I blocked together and added to my library. And I'm going to sync up my materials here just by going into my camera view. I'm going to use my material eyedropper to grab this blue material and to paste it onto the object. So this block can be unblocked so that then you have the ability to change any of the components. This can make it very easy to create custom objects, block them together, add it to your library to use for future use. So now let's focus on some of our electrical tools. To do so, I'm going to exit out of our library browser for a bit. And up here we have all of our electrical options. We have the ability to drop in a light. You'll notice it placed a recessed light because that's the default I have set up for ceiling lighting. Also, as I place lights in my kitchen, you can see in our 3D view it's going to update as it registers those lights. So next I'm going to place outlets in the room by using our Auto Place Outlets tool. You do have the ability to just place 110 or 220 volt outlets, and in the library there's a wider variety of options. Using our Auto Place Outlets, we can click inside of a room and it will automatically spread outlets throughout our room. If we zoom in on one of these above the cabinets, you can see it's automatically grounded. And the Auto Place Outlets did place a light above our sink for us as well. Now I'm going to grab a switch, place it on the wall, and then I can place another switch over here and use our Connect Electrical tool to connect all of the electrical in the room simply by drawing a line between them. And just like with everything, you have the ability to change this line if you don't like it to be red or if you want a different width or dash. Now, as soon as I connected these, you can see it automatically changed it to a three-way switch for us as soon as we connected our switches and our light to another switch. So you can create detailed electrical plans very quickly and automatically. So now let's turn our attention to our 3D view. So I'm just going to double click that full camera view so we can take a better look at it. So what we're looking at right now is just our standard render view. As you can see, with X6 you now have the ability to show shadows in a standard 3D view. And if we come up to our rendering options, here we're in standard, we can change it to a vector view, which is going to remove our texture but leave the color and the pattern. Or we can come down to a glass house, which is a great view for something like a kitchen so that we can see our shelving that's happening behind the cabinets. You also have a duotone option, as well as technical illustration, painting, watercolor, line drawings. There's quite a few rendering options for you to be able to give your clients a sample of the home. In addition to that, we have something called a ray trace. And what it does is it takes this image and it plays with the light and the textures in the room to just create a more photorealistic image. So here we have some examples of ray tracing. Here's an example of a bath done. You can see the glass is a little bit more realistic. We have a reflection going on in the mirror. Even our window has a slight reflection. Here's a kitchen. Here our granite has more of a reflective surface as well, and we have the nice stainless steel effect on our fridge. So that can be a really nice option for you to be able to illustrate to your clients. And here in this render view, you can see outside our window we're sort of just seeing a blue backdrop, but if we get back into the library, up in our core catalog we actually have a folder of backdrops. So you can come and browse through these, and we can find one that we like and place it into the plan simply by clicking into the window. So now we're overlooking a valley. You also have the option of importing a backdrop. So if you take an image of your client's front yard, for instance, you can import that in, place it as a backdrop, and they can see exactly what they'll be looking at as they have breakfast in the morning. So now one last thing before we move on to something else. We'll come back to our floor plan and let's do a wall elevation of this kitchen. So previously we've been doing full cross-section elevations. This time we're just going to take an elevation of a single wall. So the first thing we're going to do in this view is one of our new cabinet tools in X6 is the ability to do a custom backsplash, so that I can simply click and drag to create a custom backsplash. Then I can select this and it automatically cut out around my cabinets and around my stove. And it's morphable so that I can pull it up to the ceiling. Now we're going to do some dimensioning, but before we do that, I'm going to change my annotation set over to my NKBA annotation. That way my dimensions will be formatted correctly for my cabinet elevation view. So now let's come up to our auto elevations, and one of the auto elevation options is an NKBA auto elevation dimensions. So this will give me all of my cabinet elevations, and it does things like doing a center line to the appliance. Chief Architect and the NKBA work very closely together in order to make it very easy to create these dimensioned elevation views. So now, just like before with the stair elevation, we're going to save the active camera, exit out, and we'll open up this camera view, display it as a call out, and we'll name it just B. So now let's move on to framing our house. We'll zoom out. I'm also going to exit out of this full camera now that we're done with it. And we'll come up to our framing tools and just select Build Framing. Now Chief Architect gives you the ability to completely control the framing of your home. You can have different framing defaults for your first as for your second floor, as well as for your foundation if you're doing foundation framing. Going all the way through, I'm going to simply select Build Framing. And with each section, you have the ability to specify the spacing and the width of the joists, whether or not you're going to be butting them up against each other or they're going to lap, and to specify the blocking. So we'll go through each of the floors, select to build our framing. We'll need to build our wall framing, and wall framing is defined in the wall itself. So wall by wall, whether or not you have a 2-inch or a 4-inch or 6-inch wall, that's where you would be setting up your framing. Your openings, and with X6 you actually have the ability to specify the framing on a per opening basis as well. And then what you're going to use for your beams, posts, and how you're going to frame your roof. So we'll select OK. We don't want to display it in our plan view, so I'm going to select No all the way through. And then we'll do just a quick perspective framing overview. So here's our home so far, and this just gives a very general overview of how the home is framed, but it's not very useful for a construction document. So we can grab wall by wall, open up the wall framing, and here you can see a more detailed and useful view of what your framing is looking like, including each opening. As well as your headers and your cripples, you can move them all around. It does automatically frame them, but you have the ability to select any framing member and move it into a different location. So now we'll exit out of here. And since we've just taken a look at our framing, let's turn our attention to the material list. So we'll come up to Tools, down to our material list, and we'll do Calculate Materials for all floors. And the reason why I'm doing this now is that I want to direct your attention to our framing. Now I have specified that I want my framing to be populated in the material list in the style of a cut list. So what would be helpful for me if I were cutting my lumber? You do have the ability to display it as lineal feet or as a by list, so that you can have an accurate count of how much you need to get. So you'll notice when looking at the material list, it's divided into different sections. It tells you what floor it's on, the size, a brief description, and then how many you need. So if we come up to something like our siding, it's going to give you a count, whereas our concrete is going to give you more like cubic yards. So it'll also specify what the unit is. Here you have the ability to add in a price, and you can save it to a master list for future use so that you can pull it in more easily. And then it'll give you a total cost to allow you to do cost estimating. You do have the ability to manipulate your material list, so you can add in columns for markup or labor if that's something that you're going to need to have. And again, all that information can be saved in a master list as well. We'll exit out of there, and I'm not going to save it at this time. So now we'll finish off our house by working on our plot plan. So doing a site plan in Chief Architect is very easy to do. We'll begin by coming up to our terrain tools and simply selecting to create terrain perimeter, which is going to place basically a flat lot across our home. This can be moved around, or we can use our dimensioning tools in order to create a setback for our plan. So I'm going to draw 4 dimensions so that we can accurately dimension our terrain. And this works exactly like anything else in Chief Architect. You'll select the line you want to move, select the dimension, and type in what you want it to become. And we'll do that all the way around until we have everything dimensioned correctly. That way you can ensure that the house is sitting properly on the lot. If we take a 3D view of our plan, we can do a full overview. You can see it's just sitting on a flat, grassy lot. You can open this up and specify where on the lot it needs to sit, and this is going to be the distance from the first floor. And then if we tile these views vertically, we can use some of our elevation tools, and it might be easier to get into our terrain options so that those are displayed at the top of our screen. So we can use our elevation tools to draw out some elevation regions and change the shape of the lot. So these are really handy to use if you have a general idea of the lot, but you don't necessarily know exactly what every point along the terrain is. You do have the ability to import terrain data as well. So if you have that data available, that can be an easy way to do your plans. So I'm just drawing out these regions and specifying what the elevation is at each particular region. And we'll draw one more right here, which I'm going to change to 200. Oh, that's the entire pad. Let's grab that region, open it up, change it to 200. So by entering just a few points, we now have a nice sloped lot, so it's up against a bit of a hill. Then we can use our Plant Chooser tool to search for plants based on a variety of factors, including the hardiness zone, so where you're located on the map. Here in North Idaho, we're in about a 5 to 6 zone, so we can make sure that we're searching for plants that work well in our area. Now I have populated a few in my catalog, so I'm going to open up our library, come down to the user catalog, and I have a few built in, including a block of plants, just like I did earlier for our island. So if you have plants that you know look good, that you're going to be using frequently, sometimes just dropping them in to your user catalog can guarantee that they're easy for you to access in the future. So we'll grab a few trees, place them on the lot, and then we'll use our sidewalk tool, our straight sidewalk tool, in order to draw a path from the edge of our terrain up to our front door. So very quickly we were able to create a very nice looking landscaping plan. And that finishes up our house, so the last thing that we have to do is create our construction documents. So we'll exit out of our full overview. So to begin with, we'll come up and select File, New, and open up a new layout page. This is simply the default layout that we have set up, though you have the ability to create your own from scratch or to modify the ones that we have created for you. This particular layout is set up for an Architectural D printout, so the full 2 feet by 3 feet. You'll want to make sure that your page is set up for your printer. And you have the ability to change all of the details on the side, so you can add in today's date, the project, your own company information. We've imported our company logo to add to the top of the page. You would obviously import your own. And another new feature in X6 is this layout page table, which is an automatic table created for you as you go through your construction documents. So as you add to your layout, it's going to add to this table as well, though that's obviously something you can disable if it's not something you're going to use. By default, we're on page 1 right now. And if we go down to page 0, here's where you would want to make any changes, because anything done on page 0 is going to reflect to all of the other pages in your layout. So to send a view to our layout, we'll toggle back to our floor plan, and we will take another cross-section view. We have 2 set up already, so we have cross-section A and B for our corresponding stairs and wall elevation. But now let's take another back-clipped cross-section. We'll do over in this section here. And now we can zoom in on our foundation. And let's go ahead and grab a CAD detail. So in our core catalog we have a number of CAD blocks and CAD details already designed. So for instance, we have one for our floor. We can do floor at foundation and click to place that in there. Oh, not on concrete ledge. Let's find the one that is more like what we have set up. Alright, so here's just a typical floor at foundation. So we can see we have a detailing for our siding and our insulation, everything that's going on here at the foundation level. This is a block, so just like our island earlier, we can unblock it, change some of the components, and then marquee, block it back together and add it to your library. So you have quite a bit of control over these details. You can add your own collection of details, and you can also import different DXF files if you have these already prepared in other programs as well. With Chief Architect, you should never have to do the exact same thing twice. So once you've created a detail that's going to match future plans, you can save that. So from here we can send this to our layout page simply by selecting Send to Layout, and we can put it, let's put it on page 2, and we can do maybe a 1-to-1 scaling. Select OK, and then it will send it to page 2. We'll zoom in here. If we don't like the scale, so if you want that to be a little bit bigger on the page, which we would probably assume you'll have multiple details on a page, but you never know, you can open up to change the scale. So you could do 2 inches equals a foot, or whatever is going to be more applicable. These also can be rearranged, so if you don't need quite that much detail, you can pull it in. And then we can come back to our floor plan, and we'll need to actually first save this elevation, exit out, and then open it up to specify how it's going to display on the plan, and this one we'll call C. So that when we go to send this to our layout, which we can do right now, and we can send it to page 1 perhaps, we'll have our mark out for our C elevation, and then when we go back to page 2, so we would probably open this up and specify the label as cross-section C perhaps. And I'm going to go ahead and open up a plan set that we already have done with Chief Architect. So this is actually the sample plan that will come with the software, and it can give you a really good idea of what kinds of plans and details are available to do with this software. We have quite a few other plan sets available on our website for download as well if you need some more samples. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now. We'll go to chiefarchitect.com. So here is chiefarchitect.com, and down here at the bottom of our home page you can sign up for more demonstrations if you want to. Under our products drop-down menu, here's where you'll find the 3 products that we offer: Premier, Interiors, and Light. If you need help understanding some of the differences, you can go to Compare Products, and if you're upgrading from an old version or renewing your support, that's where you can do so. Under our User Center, here's where we have some of our helpful resources to assist you with the program. So we have our training videos. We have over 500 training videos available for you to watch. And it is a searchable database, so you can enter a search term, or they're divided into different series depending upon what you're wanting to learn more about. We also have a knowledge base with well over 600 articles that again can walk you step by step through pretty much anything in the program. And they are searchable up here at the search bar at the top, as well as divided into various categories. So if we wanted to search for doing a pole barn, we could simply type that in. And here's an article that we have. That's an older one. Here we go. How to create a pole structure. Here's where the information applies to, so which programs are going to be able to do what's the information provided in this article. And then it'll walk you through how you can go about that. And back up to our User Center, we have our catalog downloads. So here's where you can download bonus and manufacturer catalogs for X6, as well as some of our previous versions if you're still using that but have current support. We also have our samples gallery. So I mentioned that we have full-scale plan sets. The one that we looked at today was the Riverstone plan, but there's quite a few others that you're welcome to go and download, take a look at, get some inspiration from. In addition to that, our samples gallery is where you can see some samples of the types of images done with Chief Architect software, using our ray trace or a line drawing, watercolor, wide variety of different rendering techniques. So please go to our website, look around. There's a lot of really useful information on here, both before and after you purchase the program. So again, our three programs in our professional line of software are Premiere, Interiors, and Light. Interiors is an interior design program, so it's great for kitchen and bath designers, interior designers. It has all that high-end 3D rendering, but doesn't have really much of structure. Light is a light drafting program, so it doesn't have a lot of the high-end 3D rendering, nor does it have the kitchen cabinet options that Interiors and Premiere have. But it does have everything like framing and plan set creation. And Premiere is our top-of-the-line program. It contains all of the features of Interiors and Light plus more. So it's our full residential design program. And I briefly mentioned while we were on the website, Support and Software Assurance. This is a benefit package that we offer for our professional programs. You get a year of it for free with the initial purchase, and what it gives you is access to those catalogs that we looked at, free upgrades to the next version, priority technical support, as well as access to those training videos that we looked at as well. And then it will also give you discounts on some training options. Once again, we have Emily here with us, so as we're wrapping up here today, if you need to ask any additional questions, go ahead and type those in and she would be happy to answer those for you. And then if you have any additional questions after the webinar has ended, please feel free to call or email us. Our email address and number are here below. We would be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you so much for attending today's building demonstration and have a wonderful day.